Diseases are a terrifying thing. A hidden danger, viruses, bacteria, always waiting to enter your body when you least expect it and wreak havoc. We've all been there, and we know that even just a common cold can be a very uncomfortable experience. So what if you, and only you, knew of a disease, a new kind, one that no one else knows about or even believes you about, one that can lead to terrible things if left unchecked? Wouldn't you consider it your responsibility, and wouldn't you do everything in your power to prevent it from spreading? Well, that is an issue that the creature we'll be discussing today faces on a daily basis, or so it claims at least. In today's episode, we'll be continuing our descent into the mind-boggling depths of the SCP Foundation as we take a look at SCP-049, better known as the Plague Doctor. I'll be telling you everything we know about this fascinating entity, including its history, abilities, personality, and general behavior, as we yet again shed light on things the Foundation would rather have kept in the dark. So without any further ado, grab a pair of surgical gloves, put on that Plague Doctor mask, and let's go. Let's take a quick trip to southern France. Beautiful weather, vineyards stretching as far as the eye can see, and a series of unknown disappearances, which the SCP Foundation sets out to investigate. The unit approaches an entrance of a house. As is standard with their procedure, they breach the door and are greeted with a truly grotesque sight. Behind a table on a chair sits a humanoid figure, approximately 1.9 meters in height, clad in thick dark robes, stretching from its legs all the way to its face, covered up in a strange mask. The kind a medieval plague doctor would wear, out of all things. But perhaps even stranger than that, this creature isn't alone. It is in fact surrounded with bodies of the people who had gone missing in the area, seemingly reanimated into walking corpses that immediately engage the SCP team. Fortunately, they are swiftly dealt with, all the while SCP-049 watches with engagement, writing down notes into a thick leather-wrapped ledger. After this engagement, the creature stood up and willingly entered custody with no further resistance. It was at that moment that the SCP Foundation gained possession of what was to become one of the most fascinating and well-known creatures from their whole catalog. They didn't really know that yet, of course. As is common with other entities and objects, they first subjected SCP-049 to a series of tests, which uncovered several curious details about the composition of its body. For instance, rather than being common clothing, the robes and gloves are identical to a thick hide buildup on the skin, while the mask is composed of a kind of chitin growing out of the bones of its face. On top of that, though it was previously assumed to be mute, SCP-049 is actually very well versed in the human language, several actually, though it prefers English and medieval French, and after a bit of warming up, it even became an even communicator with the staff. This creature introduced itself as a doctor, hailing from 15th century France, even though it admits to being, quote-unquote, particularly well-traveled, and expresses professional respect towards the doctors working at the Foundation, as both of them are creatures of medicine and science. There are several interviews with this SCP, all of which are fascinating to listen to or read, which I'll link in the description, but perhaps the most interesting thing this SCP mentions is the pestilence. What is the pestilence, you ask? Well, that's a wonderful question, but as it turns out, seemingly no one besides the Plague Doctor knows. In fact, in one of the interviews, after being repeatedly asked to explain this mysterious disease, this SCP says,
I see. Well, my concern, Doctor, is that we still don't understand what you're seeking to cure, or how it manifests, or how turning these creatures into quasi-living, mindless drones helps in that effort.
You do not understand the pestilence, even after all this time. Doctor, it is an unspeakable horror, one that has shown its true face many times before, and will again. I find myself blessed with the wisdom and good senses needed to root it out and destroy it. But many, like yourself, cannot. It is a cruel judgment, I fear, to be at the mercy of a disease you cannot fully comprehend.
Perhaps hinting at the fact that we as humans are not only incapable of detecting the pestilence, but also perhaps just understanding the very concept itself. When it comes to the Plague Doctor, however, it understands. It understands very well, clearly being distressed every time the topic is brought up. Supposedly, it had already spent several lifetimes in the pursuit of a cure, and is ready to spend several more until it finally rids the world of this unspeakable terror. Now, you might be inclined to think this isn't really that big of a deal at all, but there is a small problem. See, I haven't mentioned what is perhaps the most important aspect of this SCP yet. Any living organism that touches SCP-049 will die shortly after. What is the cause of death? No one knows. Even thorough autopsies have only yielded inconclusive evidence. That's not where the story ends, however. If the Plague Doctor is presented with a dead organism, or one it has killed itself, after expressing a bit of remorse, it will proceed to operate on it using a set of tools and liquids retrieved from a small briefcase it always carries with itself. Not only does this case appear to not abide by natural laws, as we understand them at least, being able to store items larger than itself, perhaps even being infinitely deep. However, even more interestingly, whatever it is that these tools are used for can seemingly lead to reanimation of the dead body presented to 049. Based on this result, the SCP will then proceed to take notes into its journal and, if necessary, repeat the procedure several times, claiming that said body had been cleansed or cured of the pestilence. It should be noted here that the Plague Doctor has a strong preference for human subjects, but ever since an incident occurred which cost one of the staff members their life, restrictions regarding its containment have been very strict, and it is only presented with an animal carcass periodically every 2 weeks. It doesn't sleep, it doesn't eat, though apparently it enjoys the taste of food, and seemingly its only drive is to identify the pestilence, whatever that is, and make sure it is eradicated for good. Even if it means killing people it identifies as infected with it. Oh, and if you're curious about the journals and whether they actually hide a cure or explanation for what the pestilence is, well, I'm sorry to disappoint you, but unfortunately they appear to be written in a non-human language which no one has been able to translate yet. So hey, I guess this just goes to show why you should be very careful when selecting your next family doctor, because if you end up picking the guy dressed in the 15th century French medieval plague doctor suit, well, not only am I worried about your decision-making skills, but you might also just end up getting a cure that will render you and your whole family very much dead. But hey, that brings us to the end of the video, so I hope you guys enjoyed and have something new and fun to think about the next time you're visiting a hospital. If you liked this video, maybe consider leaving a like, commenting, or subscribing. All of those would be very much appreciated. And if there's anything that I missed, or any theories that you would like to cover, maybe even other SCPs you would want me to talk about, please make sure to leave those down in the comments as well. I would very much like to read them. Now with that, I'm going to wish you all a beautiful rest of today, and I'll see you in whatever next video I make. Bye bye.